On April 8, 2026, a 62-year-old architect from Long Island stood up in a Suffolk County courtroom and told a judge how he strangled 8 women. He wrapped them in burlap. He dumped them along a stretch of beach highway like construction debris. And then he went home, kissed his wife, and went back to work designing buildings in Manhattan. His name is Rex Heuermann, and for 13 years, while investigators failed and police chiefs went to prison, he searched his own name on Google to see if anyone was getting close. Nobody was. This is the story of the Gilgo Beach murders, the women who were erased, and the man who almost got away with it. I'm Carson Morgan. On May 1, 2010, a 24-year-old woman named Shannan Gilbert called 911 from Oak Beach, Long Island. The call lasted 22 minutes. She told the dispatcher someone was after her. She ran from a client's home, banged on a neighbor's door, and then disappeared into the marshland. Her body wouldn't be found for 19 months, but the search for Shannan Gilbert would uncover something far worse. On December 11, 2010, a Suffolk County police officer and his cadaver dog were searching the thick brush along Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach, looking for Gilbert. The dog alerted, but the remains they found weren't Shannan's. They belonged to Melissa Barthelemy, 24, from Buffalo, New York. She had been missing since July of 2009. 2 days later, officers returned and found 3 more sets of remains within a quarter-mile of each other. All wrapped in burlap. All women. All escorts who had advertised on Craigslist. Maureen Brainerd Barnes, 25. A single mother from Connecticut who went back to sex work to save her house from foreclosure. Megan Waterman, 22. A young mother from Maine whose 3-year-old daughter Liliana would later tell reporters she just wanted to tell her mom how much she loved her. Amber Lynn Costello, 27. A woman from North Carolina who had struggled with addiction and was trying to rebuild her life on Long Island. 4 women, wrapped in burlap, lined up along a beach highway like they were nothing. They became known as the Gilgo Four. But the beach wasn't done giving up its dead. In March and April of 2011, investigators expanded the search. They found 6 more sets of remains scattered along Ocean Parkway and the surrounding areas. Partial remains of women whose torsos had been found years earlier in Manorville, 45 miles away. A toddler. A person of Asian descent still unidentified to this day. 11 sets of human remains. 1 stretch of highway. And not a single suspect. Before we go any further, these women need their names back. Because for 13 years, the system that was supposed to protect them treated them like they didn't matter. They were escorts. They advertised on Craigslist. And that fact became an excuse for investigators to move slowly, for media to look away, and for a killer to keep killing. Sandra Costilla was 28 years old, originally from Trinidad and Tobago. She was killed in November of 1993. Her remains were found by hunters in a wooded area 60 miles from Gilgo Beach. For 30 years, nobody connected her death to the others. She is the earliest known victim. Karen Vergata was 34, from Hell's Kitchen, Manhattan. She disappeared around Valentine's Day, 1996. Her legs were found on Fire Island that April by 2 brothers looking for firewood. The rest of her wasn't found until 2011. She wasn't identified by name until August of 2023 through genetic genealogy. For 27 years, she was known only as Fire Island Jane Doe. Valerie Mack was 24, from the Atlantic City area. She used the name Melissa Taylor and worked as an escort in Philadelphia. She disappeared around 2000. Her torso was found by a hunter's dog in Manorville. She was never reported missing. Her family didn't know she was gone. Jessica Taylor was 20. She was described by her family as loving and compassionate. She disappeared in July of 2003. Her dismembered torso was found in Manorville. The rest of her remains were found along Ocean Parkway 8 years later. Maureen Brainerd Barnes was a single mother of 2 from Norwich, Connecticut. She worked seasonal jobs. When she received an eviction notice, she went back to the one thing she knew would pay fast. She took an Amtrak train to Grand Central Terminal in July of 2007. Her last phone call was on July 9th at 11:43 p.m., telling a friend she was going on an outcall. She was 25. Melissa Barthelemy graduated from cosmetology school in Buffalo before moving to the Bronx. After she disappeared in July of 2009, her killer used her phone to call her 15-year-old sister. The calls came over 5 weeks. They were vulgar, mocking, and cruel. She was 24. Megan Waterman was the young mother from Maine. She was last seen at a Holiday Inn in Hauppauge, Long Island, walking toward a convenience store at 1:30 in the morning. Her daughter Liliana was 3. Her mother, Lorraine Ila, never lived to see the man who killed her daughter face justice. She died before the guilty plea. Megan was 22. Amber Lynn Costello had moved from North Carolina to Long Island. She was trying to get clean. On the night she disappeared, her roommate watched a client pick her up. He later described the man as looking like an ogre, driving a first-generation Chevrolet Avalanche. That description would matter 13 years later. Amber was 27, 8 women, strangled, some dismembered, wrapped in burlap and discarded along a highway. The youngest was 20. The eldest was 34. The earliest was killed in 1993. The most recent in 2010. 17 years of killing. And nobody stopped him. The question that hung over this case for over a decade wasn't just who killed these women. It was why it took so long to find out. The answer involves corruption, institutional failure, and a police department that seemed more interested in protecting itself than solving murders. When the Gilgo Four were found in December of 2010, the case should have been treated as a top priority. 4 bodies, same method, same location. A serial killer was operating on Long Island, but the Suffolk County Police Department moved slowly. The victims were sex workers. Their cases generated sympathy in the press, but urgency did not follow inside the department. Then James Burke became Suffolk County Police Chief in 2012. Burke would later be convicted on federal charges, including obstruction of justice and civil rights violations. He had beaten a man who stole a duffel bag from his car, then orchestrated a cover-up. He served 40 months in federal prison. But before all that, Burke did something arguably worse for the Gilgo Beach case. He blocked cooperation with the FBI. He curtailed investigative collaboration. He shut down channels that could have led to a suspect years earlier. Former Suffolk County DA Thomas Spota and his anti-corruption chief Christopher McPartland both received 5-year federal sentences for conspiracy, witness tampering, and obstruction related to covering for Burke. The police department tasked with finding a serial killer was being run by criminals. By the time Burke left in 2015, years had been lost. Leads had gone cold. Evidence had degraded. And the families of the victims had been left to grieve without answers. It wasn't until February of 2022 that a new police commissioner and a new district attorney finally formed a dedicated Gilgo Beach task force. and within 6 weeks of its creation, that task force identified a suspect. 6 weeks. After 13 years. His name is Rex A. Heuermann, 62 years old, a licensed architect in New York City. He ran a firm called RH Consultants and Associates, specializing in building codes and permits. He commuted to Manhattan from the same house in Massapequa Park, Long Island, that he'd lived in since childhood. He married a woman named Asa Ellerup in 1996. They had a daughter, Victoria. Asa had a son from a previous relationship. By all outward appearances, they were a normal suburban family. But Rex Heuermann had another life. When his wife traveled, particularly to Iceland to visit her family, Heuermann used burner phones and burner email accounts to contact sex workers. In the 2 years before his arrest alone, he used burner phones to contact escorts more than 500 times. He maintained what investigators called the Thawk email account. It contained thousands of searches for violent and sadistic material. It also contained something else. Over 200 searches about the Gilgo Beach serial killer case. He searched the victims' names. He read news articles about the investigation. He monitored the progress, or lack of it, of the very case in which he was the prime suspect. He was watching to see if anyone was getting close. When investigators searched his Massapequa Park home after the arrest, they found 297 firearms, including a walk-in basement gun vault. They found trace evidence, hair fibers, DNA samples, and on his laptop they found a Microsoft Word document created in 2000 and modified through 2002. It appeared to be a planning document. Under a heading labeled Problems, it listed DNA, tire marks, blood stains, and fingerprints. Under Supplies, it listed rope, cutting tools, medical gloves, and bags. He had written a checklist for murder. The case against Heuermann was built on 4 pillars. First, DNA. A task force surveillance team followed Heuermann through Midtown Manhattan and watched him discard a box of partially eaten pizza into a sidewalk garbage can. They retrieved it. The lab matched DNA from the pizza crust to a male hair found on the burlap used to wrap one of the victims. They also matched a hair found near Maureen Brainerd Barnes to DNA consistent with Heuermann's wife, placing material from the Heuermann household at the crime scene. Second, the burner phones. FBI analysts matched cell tower data from Heuermann's disposable phones to the victim's own phone records. The burner signals consistently connected to towers inside a small geographic zone investigators called the Box, centered on Massapequa Park, exactly where Heuermann lived. Third, the avalanche. When Amber Costello disappeared in 2010, her roommate described the client who picked her up. He looked like an ogre. He drove a first-generation Chevrolet Avalanche. Vehicle registration records confirmed Heuermann owned that exact truck during that period. Fourth, timing. Cell phone records and travel documentation showed that Heuermann's wife was out of the country or out of state during the periods when the Gilgo Four were killed. He killed when his wife wasn't home. On July 13, 2023, Rex Heuermann was arrested in Midtown Manhattan and charged with 3 murders. Over the next 18 months, 4 more charges followed. And on April 8, 2026, he stood in a Suffolk County courtroom and pleaded guilty to all of them, and admitted to an 8th. In court, Heuermann told the judge he strangled all 8 women. He admitted to meeting them, killing them, and disposing of their bodies across Gilgo Beach, Manorville, and Southampton. He pleaded guilty to 3 counts of murder in the first degree for Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. He pleaded guilty to 4 counts of murder in the second degree for Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Jessica Taylor, Sandra Costilla, and Valerie Mack. And he admitted to intentionally causing the death of Karen Vergata as part of the plea agreement, without being formally charged. He faces 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus 100 years to life. Sentencing is scheduled for June 17, 2026. As part of the agreement, Heuermann agreed to cooperate fully with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. Federal profilers will study him to better understand serial offenders. He is required to be truthful, accurate, and complete. Family members of the victims sat in the courtroom as he described how he killed their daughters, their sisters, their mothers. Some wept. Elizabeth Batskill, one victim's mother, told reporters simply, "I am glad that this is over. But is it over?" Heuermann killed across 17 years, from 1993 to 2010. There are long gaps between known victims. Investigators have not definitively said there are no other victims. One set of remains found along Ocean Parkway, a person believed to be of Asian descent, has never been identified and has never been connected to Heuermann. That person is still waiting for a name. And then there is Shannan Gilbert, the woman whose disappearance started the search that uncovered everything. Her death was ruled an accidental drowning, but an independent autopsy found damage to her hyoid bone, consistent with strangulation. Her family has never accepted the official ruling. She was the reason the bodies were found, and she may have been a victim herself. We still don't know. What we do know is this: 8 women were killed by a man who walked among us as a professional, a husband, a father. A man who built buildings by day and searched for his own crimes by night. And the system that should have caught him was too broken, too corrupt, and too indifferent to stop him. It took a dog named Blue, a search for a different woman, and 13 years of failure before anyone looked in the right direction. The women of Gilgo Beach deserved better than that. They deserved to be found sooner. They deserved to be searched for harder. And they deserved to be remembered as more than case numbers. Sandra, Karen, Valerie, Jessica, Maureen, Melissa, Megan, Amber. They had names, they had lives, and they mattered. I'm Carson Morgan. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe,